Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, and welcome to our interview today with the wonderful Donna Clayton, a great friend of mine and one of my fellow FMP Board of Directors. And today we're going to be talking about all things education. So we'll crack on. And if Donna, would you just like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and how you've got to be one of our industry's experts in education.
Hi Sue, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. It's awesome.
And the first episode.
Whoop, whoop. I'm really excited. I'm very honoured to be number one, I have to say. I feel like I'm ranking really high on your friends list.
Yeah.
With this, but thank you so much. So just to give everybody a really brief, and I'll be really brief, intro about me. So my name is Donna Clayton. My main kind of business is I have a beauty training business called Metis Beauty Academy, and I also have my second online business, which is the Academy Creator. So quick intro for me is I've been the FE, which is the Further Education Teaching World now since 2002. Don't want to add that up, that's too long. So I've been teaching for a very long time, mostly in colleges, and have quite an extensive kind of college career there. Teaching across nails, beauty, holistics, you name it. I kind of pretty much teach across pretty much everything and managing programs. And then when my son was 3, I went out and set my own training academy. Made loads of mistakes and then eventually figured it all out through trial and error, and then some help from some coaches and things like that, which I'm truly grateful for. And then about a year ago, I launched the Academy Creator as well, because I want to help other people set up training academies and not have to go through all the mistakes I had. So I've been teaching now for a year other people how to set up their training academies. And also about 6 months into that time, I got invited to be the Director of Education for the FMP, which is the Federation of Nail Professionals, which is, we kind of knew each other before that point anyway. We had some crossover with what I was already doing with the Academy Creator, and then we just got to converse even more with the FMP. So I'm super excited, and I'm so passionate about education and standards and our industry. Like, they're like, if you chop me in half, that's what you'd see.
Yeah. Like a stick of rock.
Like a stick of rock. You would see the NOS and standards and education.
Yeah, I know. It's just so weird, Donna, because we kind of met, was it last January, wasn't it? I think 2020, just before the pandemic and all of the drama of the last year started. And yeah, now we're kind of work wives, aren't we? We spend quite a lot of time.
I would count you as my work wife right now.
Yeah,
definitely.
we are. Yeah, we're kind of work partners now. But so back to what we're going to talk about today, and if we just start, because the whole point of today's podcast is just to cover everything around education and qualification, so we can help those that are newer to industry, or maybe even if they want CPD education, so that they can understand a little bit around how qualifications how they rank against each other, what a qualification is, and just how they can kind of work their way through the minefield and of just trying to make sure they get the right certificates that are in their portfolio for them. If I'll leave you to carry on with that one.
It's a big question.
Huge.
So yes, that is a big question indeed. So looking at then, obviously at qualifications, we have a different breadth of qualifications. And the main kind of ones you would do, which used to be kind of all college bound, but now obviously you can do these in private academies and things as well, would be your regulated qualifications. So these would be your off-qual regulated qualifications. And this sits on the sort of national framework as well. So things like that you would see would be like your BTECs, you would see your MVQs and your VRQ kind of qualifications for that. And traditionally they would sit in like your, say your level 2 beauty, for example, your level 2 nails, or even your hairdressing. And your level 3 kind of qualifications as well. And obviously now we have things like the level 4 as well, which is dipping into that. So they tend to be quite big qualifications, but you can also do each part of those qualifications in single units. The main difference with these is that they come from a set of standards which are written by Havia, which is our only industry authority, but is the industry authority for beauty and hair and nails and everything in between. And they basically set our benchmarks of what you should be able to do if you're a competent person in the workplace and what theory you need to know. So one thing you can be rest assured with any of those sorts of qualifications that sit in with that off-qual framework, no matter whether it comes from, say, City and Guilds or VTCT or something like that, or a CIBTAC qualification in your college or your training academy, is that you know they're all sticking to the same standards. So you're all learning the same and you're all being assessed and graded against the same set of standards. So there is that. We then got the accredited side of things, and I guess kind of loosely you can put like brand training in with that as well, because a lot of that now comes together. So you can have your accredited qualifications. Now, they're slightly different. They don't actually stick to any specific standards, your accredited qualifications, because they're basically insurance companies. So it's an insurance company insuring that provider for them to run the course as well. Now, what you will notice as well is not every type of qualification you want to do is available in that national framework I talked about first. So this is where the accredited kind of side comes in, and it fits in really, really well for that. So this is great for newer emerging treatments that are coming onto the market, so that it's at least been checked over at a minimal standards, at least with the insurance companies, but it doesn't fit into the national framework just yet either. So you will find, depending on which provider you go to, you can find some slightly varying standards. So it's definitely worth investigating a little bit more before you hand over your cash when it comes down to the accredited side of it, just to make sure what standards they're following and things like that as well, what's involved. And then we have CPD. And CPD is your continued professional development. And with the CPD, the idea of this is you're supposed to already have an underlying base skill, foundation skill already in a qualification, and that you're topping it up. So it's a skills extension. It's something that's adding on. So take someone who's qualified in acrylic nails, for example, and they're going to learn how to do, I don't know, like baby bloomers or competition work or something like that, or more 3D sculpting and things like that with it, then that would be considered CPD, because they already know how to do the basics and they're now adding to that. So that's a CPD one. So again, that can fall under the accredited side, or it can be down under like a CPD points kind of side of things as well. So it can kind of all be wrapped up together. But essentially, it doesn't have to be on a framework side of things, because you already have your core skill. You're just topping up your knowledge as well with that. So there are kind of our three main ways of looking at education, I guess. So if you're new to something, kind of going down the regulated route is probably your best bet, particularly if it's a new skill completely to you. If you're just topping up, then that's where the accredited side of things and the CPD side of things kind of comes in, particularly just dipping your toe in the water.
Excellent. And so what about, because there's also attendance certificates, aren't there, that you can get? And I know I've had a few of these over the years. And so would you deem those to be more along the CPD kind of qualification? Or actually, we're misusing the word qualification there. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, getting my pedantic head on. But it is, but those certificates, you know, they can be issued by anybody really, can't they? They don't have to have much structure behind them.
Yeah, the attendance doesn't actually have, all it says is that you turned up to a course and you sat in on the course. If you get an attendance certificate, it's not showing that you've passed anything, it's not showing that you've completed anything, and that you're competent in something. So you can turn up to a course, you can attend that course, you can make notes, you can do stuff on that day, but if you haven't had your competence tested, then you need something else, you need something further at that point. So you know, anybody can turn up to a workshop, and that's where I kind of see workshops a little bit really, is a certificate of attendance. You know, that could be a fun nail art thing or a different type of mask, and it's something that your insurers don't necessarily require you to have. Whereas when you're doing something that's got, you know, paying members of the public or a very new in-depth addition to your skills and things, so it kind of crosses in that CPD kind of line, I guess, really. But yeah, you're right, using that term qualification, you've got to be really careful about that one. It really is for that.
It's like, because it is, and the thing is, and so many people refer to every kind of course that you go on as a qualification, and we have to remember that all qualifications and all courses are not equal. And and it isn't like an attendance, you know, an attendance certificate can be given for attending a seminar, can't it? There could be no practical skill involved at all.
Yeah, it could just be theory. You could sit there and read a book and give yourself an attendance certificate as well. So, you know, it's nice to have to show your employer that, say, you went to something or you listened to something. It's great for things like that. But in terms of physically doing a treatment or insurance and stuff like that, it doesn't really have any like main connotations behind it.
Yeah. And I think, would I be right in saying as well that with an attendance attendance certificate provider, they would not need to be qualified in anything. They would not need to be a qualified educator, because I think I'm sure that you can just basically say, this is, I mean, you could do a YouTube video and that would be enough to say that you've attended.
Definitely. Yeah, that's all you need to hand out. And actually for the longest time, actually, it was kind of when we first started getting these attendance things, that was all our brand educators could give us. However, the brand education attendance certificate was enough for insurance at that time, because we didn't have this whole accredited thing. So that's kind of how that all started, really. But yeah, you don't have to have anything to be able to hand it out. You know, my son could run a session hand out everybody an attendance certificate.
I'm going to go and do an attendance session for plumbing or something. You know, I've watched my husband do that for quite a while, so now I'm sure I could do that. But
my son did like a day of being a farmer for the day. He's not a qualified farmer, he got an attendance certificate for the day.
This is it. But I think those analogies are really quite useful, because if there's no assessment, then it isn't any kind of, and it really isn't a form of qualification in any way, is there? If there's no formal assessment.
It needs to have an assessment, particularly for insurance purposes. The insurance purposes, it must have some type of assessment to prove your competence in your theory and your practical work, depending on what it is, obviously. Yeah,
which neatly leads us on to my next question, which is around due diligence, actually. And anyone, if you're not sure of what the term due diligence means, it's just basically following up on information that you've read, making sure that you are doing research into the background of what it is that you're going to buy, and just making sure that it's fit for purpose. And that's like the key word here. So so as I say, there's been a lot of talk around due diligence. So what kind of things can people look for in a course to make sure that where they're putting their money, they're going to get the appropriate level of value and usefulness for that certificate that they're going to gain? And also, because with the NOS, you were just talking about the standards, and so maybe does the National Occupational Standards feed into this?
I love the fact that you use fit for purpose.
But it's so true, isn't it? And
fit for purpose is my favourite phrase.
But also, something we have to remember with this as well is that ultimately, as educators, I mean, you're an educator, I'm an educator, and we've got huge numbers of friends that are educators, and and the majority of us, well, I think everyone that we associate with, educate well. But there are educators that don't educate so well, and they may frequent certain discount sites and stuff like that. But they have to be fit for purpose, and if not, then this is where trading standards can come in. So if you, but that's another whole episode, I feel. But
that could completely be another episode.
So just as a rough guide, what kind of things should people be checking to make sure that they're getting a good course?
So before you part with your money and hand it over, and this is part of that, and it is part of the due diligence thing, you need to have a check to see what it is that you're getting for your money. Okay, you need to find out what type of qualification it is. So is it a regulated qualification? Is it an accredited course? And you should be asking yourself at this point as well, do I need a regulated qualification rather than the accredited one as well? That should be something that you should be able to decide first. If it's a brand new skill to you, maybe the regulated route should be the better route to go down first. So you need to be able to factor that in. So it's a case of thinking about those two things first. Which way are you needing to go if it's a completely new skill? And then when you're looking at it, you need to find out, who is it the awarding body's with. So if it's a regulated, you need to check who the awarding body is with, and you can go through and check on those websites actually if they're still registered and current, because that can be the other thing. They might have been a VTC centre at one point, but they might no longer be one and are still advertising that fact, or they might be falsely advertising that they are a VTC centre and they're not.
I actually have had that one of my first qualifications that I took.
It can happen,
and that person went on to advertised that they were a BABTAC educator, and they weren't.
You need to just go back through and just it takes 5 seconds to go on the website and just double check back through. Don't take their word for it, because some people just use a logo off the internet, unfortunately. So you need to check that. Same with the accreditation side of it as well. Check that they're current with the accreditation body and what the standards are for the accreditation body as well that they're using. Whether they're using someone like BABTAC or Pro Beauty or someone like that to kind of accredit and ensure their courses. So you need to check that first. You need to find out if it is an accredited course or is it a CPD type course as well. You need to check. Looking at the length of time it is. You also want to check actually what you have to do to prove your competence for as well, and how your information is going to be delivered. I think that's really important. You know, you see an online course, maybe, you know, is that online course someone actually teaching you online for whatever skills it is you're doing, like over a Zoom, or are you going to be given a link to a YouTube account? So you need to just double check that as well. So how is the work going to be delivered? What is the expectations in terms of you completing work? How will you be assessed? And how will you know you're competent? What's the time scale for in terms of getting your, like say, case studies and things like that in there as well? You need to have a look at that. Is there a refund policy? You know, what is their grievance kind of procedures and things as well? You know, just dig a little bit deeper, and also have a look at them, look at the testimonials, look at some of the other comments around the rooms, you know, see if they've got like a student group or something like that. Maybe you can ask questions, and ask questions of the educator. You can ask them, how long have you been doing this? You know, what qualifications do you have? And they should come back and quite freely explain that. If they've not already put that all over their glossy website, they should quite freely come back and give you this information. It's not something they should get shirty over because they've missed it on they've missed it in their briefing, you know. And it's easy to do. I've forgotten things, you know, and people have had to ask, and I've gone, oh my goodness, I haven't put that up. I can't believe you've had to ask me. But you know, that's your mistake and not theirs. You know, they shouldn't have to ask, but if they do ask, you should be quite happy to kind of freely give that information. So it is about looking at how long have they been doing that skill. And what you need to bear in mind is that for some accreditation kind of companies, is that that person only has to have done that skill for 6 months, maybe 2 years maximum, depending on who you go with. So you want to ask yourself, have they got enough knowledge and experience to be teaching you? Are they in that position as well? So it is worth checking that. So leading, I guess, onto the educator kind of thing, is that if you're looking for the qualifications they should have, a very minimum to show that they are able to teach someone is their AET, which is the Award in Education and Training. Or it could be the PETALS, because it was called PETALS a little while ago, or Cert Ed before that.
Or the 7307, going back a bit.
Or if we go back to when I qualified, it was the 7307, yeah. Stage 1, Stage 2. So it does track back a little bit as well, but they should have a relevant teacher's qualification as well. They should have a course plan for you, and just, you know, if you get stuck, like, what's the protocol? If you get stuck, what's the support system in place? You know, are they going to be on the end of a phone or an email for you? Is there a time extension? Can you come back in if you struggle? Because, you know, we just don't all fit in the same little box. You know, we don't all learn the same, and it will take some people longer than others to learn. What's their backup plan for that? Because we don't always fit into 1 or 2 days.
And also an interesting thing just to pick up on as well is that, you know, if you have, you know, a learning requirement, you know, maybe if you're hard of hearing, or maybe if you suffer from dyslexia, or you've got attention deficit or something like that, you know, and these are like really common issues for people that educators do come across. And it's like, so if you do suffer with any of those kind of conditions, then, you know, just checking with the educator to make sure that they understand how to deal with that, because any educator that's gone through the appropriate training themselves will have been instructed and given advice and guidance on how to help and assist people from all different learning backgrounds.
Definitely. I mean, particularly the higher up they've gone in their teaching qualifications, if they've gone as far as the certificate or the diploma rather than the award is very short and sweet, and if they've gone as far as that, they would have had a lot of theory and training on there, but they should be adaptable. Yeah. And should be able to adapt colours of papers, different fonts of text, put in some, I mean, I've got like audio over some of my stuff for my students. They should be able to just, you know, switch things up a little bit and tweak and change for the individual's learners' needs, really. There shouldn't be any barrier to your learning. And like I said, yeah, not everybody all fits in the same kind of box as well. So whatever you need to do to tweak and change that up for that particular candidate is better.
Absolutely. And also, just going back to the point you were saying about about online, because obviously through the pandemic, huge amounts of education and training has been occurring online, some of which has been fantastic and some of which has been less so. And, you know, well, there's been some horrors, hasn't there, that we've seen going through, you know, like online microblading and stuff like that. I mean, it just, some of it is really quite
£50 no less.
Yes, but some of it's really hard to understand how anyone that's a professional educator can think that that is acceptable. You know, you need to be in the room. And so if you are doing online, just make sure that you've got plenty of opportunity to attend practical sessions. It's fine doing theory online, and it's fine for a lot of different treatments to do online via Zoom for practical, you know, input. but you still need to be assessed in, you know, in a sensible way, just to make sure that the educator can see clearly what you are doing. And especially if you're in the skin or injecting into the skin, you really, really need to be monitored during that process.
Brings me out in cold sweats, that thought. But yeah, I mean, some things work really well, and anything you can get a camera right over, like nails, it works really well in. Actually, some brow work, it works quite well in as well, having a zoom camera. But you kind of need that interaction. Someone's got to be able to see and stop you and check you and carry on a bit further. So I think there's that kind of element. It's great for refreshing, great for little nail art things and stuff like that, really small little add-ons. It's great for stuff
especially
like that.
After a course, isn't it? If you've had issues, you know, so that you can, you know, and particularly with nails, I mean, one of our counterparts in the Federation, Jenny, has had amazing success with her online training over the last year or so, and you know, and just, you know, her perspective on being able to view, you know, apex of nails and C curves and all that kind of stuff, and looking down the barrel is probably so much more. She's adamant that she's actually able to see so much more, which for, you know, an educator is amazing, because we all
I can see that completely, because, you know, you could have 10 students learning nails leaning over the back of you trying to look round at one demo model you're doing, or they all get a bird's eye view of a zoomed in camera lens. I think I know which one I prefer.
So some things do adapt really, really well, but things like that maybe come under the JCCP guidelines maybe should be a real, like, in attendance.
I think that's the thing when it comes to the due diligence. It's like not getting caught up with the shiny object syndrome. It's taking a step back and asking yourself, you know, actually, would this be better, you know, in there? Because ultimately, you know, the responsibility still lies with you and not the educator should something go wrong. So I think it's worth remembering that.
And the thing is as well, you know, and quite often people will make a judgment on a course that they're going to take it because of the price of the course, and that isn't really, that shouldn't be the first port of call on your checklist, because, you know, sometimes it's worth investing in yourself and making sure that you get the best education that you can, rather than the most value driven that
definitely.
Anyway, so what happens when we don't get it right, and what can the consequences be, Donna?
Wow. We've kind of touched on that a little bit, haven't we, really? But I think it is really important, I think, to remember that, you know, no matter what course that you do, even with the kind of, you know, going all the correct pathways and things like that as well, like, you know, you've still got to make sure that you follow protocols and things like that as well. Ultimately, your insurer is looking to you to make sure you've done your due diligence first, to make sure that the course is right, and that we come back to that fit for purpose. And that's why we talk about the standards so much, this national framework of standards as well, because everything is marked against that. There's nothing else for an insurer to look at. So, you know, we like to kind of mark ourselves against that as well. But if you've, you know, say taken something that you maybe haven't done your due diligence in, and, you know, you've taken a short course, maybe there were some procedures missing or something like that, and you didn't have all the knowledge you needed, and you've gone away and done a treatment on a paying client as well, and it's gone wrong, the first thing that happens, obviously, when a client wants to then make a claim against you, your insurer is going to come back to that course. They're going to look at your training, they're going to look at your manufacturers, you know, make sure you follow all the manufacturers' protocols as well, and they're going to look at that training, and they're going to decide whether that training is fit for purpose. And if there's no way to prove that that was fit for purpose, that you were competently assessed, that you can show that you were assessed, that you had some interaction as well, and can prove all of that, ultimately the responsibility still lies with you, and as the claimant, you're not going to actually be able to claim on that insurance. They're not going to be able to cover you. The loss adjuster will come in and decide that you're personally liable in more cases than none, and therefore not only does that affect your future policies, but it also means you're going to have to deal with that, and that might mean, you know, that's coming out of your personal assets. And if you don't have a lot of personal assets, it's a problem. And I do know that this has happened to people before, where they haven't had all of their I's dotted and T's crossed and things, and you know, and they have had to then set up like payment plans to pay back thousands. You know, this was over an eyebrow shape actually, but like thousands and thousands had to go back over something just through one little bit that they just missed looking at it. So it's not to kind of I guess the scaremongering things, but you need to ask yourself, is it appropriate for such a such a face-to-face tactile environment that we work in, you know, is some things better off being done face-to-face where someone can give you the hands-on support as well, I guess. And those are the ultimate big consequences. Obviously, the other consequences are not getting it right, poor results, your client's not returning, your reputation. You know, there are simple things other than just big things like, you know, you're going to have to pay out maybe out of your, you know, using your mortgage or your house or whatever. I know people that's happened to, but it's more about, you know, ultimately as a business itself is, you know, what does that put out to your clients as well? If you're doing something incorrect, you're not getting the results you're after because you didn't have all the information that you needed, and you're making lots of mistakes. That's maybe handing out refunds left, right and centre. That's maybe multiple insurance cases. You know, it's just, it's not great.
It could be, I mean, you can open yourself up to a whole can of worms. And it is another, and one of the things actually is just going through my mind whilst we're talking about this is, you know, going back to kind of the accredited training, is that, you know, obviously there's always new and emerging treatments. And, you know, you were saying, you know, that many of the accrediting insurers expect, you know, 6 months to 2 years of experience by the educator. But sometimes they can't have, because, you know, there's a new treatment and that needs to be taught to the masses more quickly than 6 months. And so, you know, there's just a little bit there as well that you kind of need to, if there's an educator that's teaching a new emerging treatment, you know, how many treatments have they done? If they've only been on, you know, a training course in America or something, say, and they come back and they immediately start training, what, you know, ask them what skills they've learned, how many times they've done it, what case studies they've done. You know, there's due diligence everywhere in this. And if it's a new treatment, then just make sure that you're
for sure
foundation skills that would support them being able to teach a new skill like that.
I remember when I do some brand training. I remember when the henna stuff came out, the henna brown, and, you know, experienced tinter and things as well, did all my training and things like that. I still had to do 15 case studies, and they had to be marked by the head office in Australia for that, before I was allowed to get started on running that.
And there should be, especially with brand, anything that comes via a brand, if it's, I don't know, sometimes things are a little bit more vague, aren't they? But if it's via a brand, that brand should be requiring much practice.
Most of them, I think most of the big ones do as well anyway. I think a good majority do, because they have that sleek little system and things like that. It's just how quickly is the rollout and things like that going to be, and how things have developed and things. And I think it is important to remember that. And I think other little red flags and things as well is like when you get, you know, when you ask about equipment and things like that, and they say, here's your Amazon link.
That's it. Also,
it's things like that.
It's like, you know, is kit included, you know, or do you need to go and buy?
Do you need to go and buy a kit? Who do I go and shop and buy my kit from? And are they a wholesaler? Because again, due diligence, it's that if there's a problem with the machinery, it's having that trail, that audit trail to come back to, so it lies with the manufacturer, and that's not Amazon.
No,
or eBay. They're not your manufacturer.
Or Alibaba.
And it kind of stops there at that point. When do you go back to the manufacturer even further when there's a problem? So you've got to make sure that you've done that side of your due diligence. So yes, sometimes it does cost us a bit more to get something from a wholesaler, but you have got that added protection in that audit trail, that it's worth remembering as well. Like, you've got to make sure you've got that audit trail, because ultimately it could be really costly for you to get something, have a problem with it, and you're going to have to keep replacing it or dealing with it, even down to not injuring clients, just having problems with it. You've got no one to come back to.
And because I know I bought a machine years ago, and I had a problem with it, and I had such problems, and in the end I had to not do one part of what was on this machine because I couldn't actually get it sorted, because manufacturing was not great. Let's say that. No. Anyway, so next, when you are looking and you're wanting to join our industry, what's your biggest tip, do you reckon, for getting people to an employable state? What kind of qualifications do you think are best to be employed in a salon environment?
I guess really for this, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Going into a salon, generally salons are going to want you to be able to do a good majority of things. Now, anything around the level 2 kind of level, particularly in beauty, should I say, more than it is in like nails. Nails, it kind of dips more into that level 3 area. But generally level 2 beauty, for example, is your bread and butter work, really. So the sorts of activities and skills that come within that is your bread and butter. So generally it's more cost effective to go and do the bigger qualification and to take your time learning that as you go, but you can equally find somewhere that allow you to do each one of those skills individually as well. I would say that would set you up a little bit better because of the practice that you tend to get in with this. When you're doing a regulated qualification, you have to do sort of almost case studies and reflection case studies before you take your actual assessment and get graded, so you get a little bit more practice at it. Having said that, though, obviously it's not something you're 100% sure that you want to embark on, then I always think that sometimes that's where the accreditation side comes in, is that it's good for dipping your toe in the water, you know, maybe try out that manicure qualification or something like that, see if you like it, and then that's some of that work can be mapped over to your regulated qualifications when you want to go all in. So that allows you to have that. And the other kind of skills that come from that learning environment is generally all of the other practices that we need. It's the health and safety, it's the risk assessments, it's the business practices, it's how to communicate with the clients and the consultation, it's all the legality side of things to make sure you're not missing out on that. And that isn't always covered in some of the accreditation stuff because they're very skill focused quite often, not all, because I'm doing my damnedest to change that, but they are quite often skill focused and they don't focus on this other stuff as well that's in the benchmark of these standards, these national standards. And that's the bit you're missing out from as well. But that's not to say, particularly if you're a mature learner, that you have to come in and sit in a class full of 16-year-olds and attend college, because you don't. Yeah, I know. So you don't have to do that, because a lot of people when they're coming into the industry, sometimes they're coming in a little bit later, they've done something else. So there are loads of training academies where you can do it independently there. And you can do each unit independently as well. And they're nice small groups and things as well. Some of the colleges even run these nice small groups in an evening and things, or weekends as well. So you don't have to go into that kind of route as well. There's loads of ways of getting a regulated qualification in a nice small centre locally as well. So I'd say that would set you up better, particularly if you want to be employed by a salon, because I think most salons will need people to initially be able to do the majority of things before they have a couple of specialities with each, you know, staff member. But that does depend on the ethos. I know salons that insist on everybody doing everything, and I know some that encourage a little bit of speciality kind of things. But obviously that's an issue if someone leaves, because then you're missing the whole treatment off your menu.
Absolutely. And I think it's always about, as an employer, as a salon employer myself, having a level 3 of especially in the beauty side of things. And I think probably that would go to hair as well. And nails is kind of always kind of sits in its own little place, because there isn't such a formal route of qualification through. But definitely, I know for myself as an employer, level 3 is always so helpful, because I think it helps with the advanced work.
Yeah, the advanced work it really helps with. I think level 3 hairdressing now is becoming more standard, as a standard, you know, it helps you a bit more shop floor ready, whereas when I was at college it was the level 2. But the level 3 beauty usually is a natural kind of falling progression of some, and there's different routes for the level 3 beauty. The level 4 is getting very popular now as well, because so many salons do the advanced lasers and things like that as well.
I've been very tempted.
Yeah, and the advanced techniques that actually, that's almost going to become common practice again as well. But not every salon does, say, electrical treatments and things. So that's why they've got like the massage route with the level 3, and then they've got obviously the sort of more traditional generalized kind of route as well with the electricals and things. But mostly what they need out of that is the body massage and the anatomy and physiology. They're the 2 main sticking points for a lot of future courses. And if you want to do more facial work, then you've definitely got to get that electrical unit in as well.
Absolutely. And it is, I think, you know, that level 3, you know, just even the level 3 anatomy and physiology and pathology now is just that is a required, I think, in salon now, because with anything, even if you can get brand training for electrical machinery and stuff, you still need to have that fundamental.
You need to have that in place, because they're not going to teach you that. They'll teach you their machine, but they expect you to have that already.
And this is why employers, I think, always want to have that level 3, because it just opens the door to everything.
And again, that can be done in units as well. It doesn't have to be one big thing. You can literally do it in bite-sized chunks over a period of time, so you're getting a return on your investment and things as well.
Okay, so with everything we've just been talking about, what changes are we likely? I mean, we know that there's been so much talk over regulation and education and all sorts of different things.
Yeah, so I think, you know, education-wise, I think we're going to see quite a few changes, not only with more like kind of tightening up, I think, of the regulations and things, particularly because we've got the new national occupational standards out as well. So we're starting to see more depth coming from that, more broader, and more of the treatments we've been seeing kind of out in the public domain a little bit more as well. So we're starting to see more of that kind of coming online. But I think over this kind of last year, we'd had the online kind of thing dipping a little bit. We're starting to see more of that now. So I think we will see that, but for a variety of things. I think we'll see a lot of business practices and things, all the kind of soft skills. I call them soft skills really, but I think we'll see a lot more of that popping up around academies and colleges and things as well. And we'll definitely see more use of Zoom for refreshing, for assessment purposes, to save kind of people traveling places and things. I know a lot of the awarding bodies have adopted that sort of Zoom kind of to do their sort of auditing and things like that as well. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that online and online resources as well. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, less of the sit in the classroom, open up a manual, be bored to death for 2 hours and then do your practical work. I think we're going to see a little bit more of a change with things like that. And I think it's going to be quite an exciting kind of future to see how we can adopt all these different things that are coming online now as well, and these different methodologies as well. There's so many different systems that you can use for online work, and I use that word quite loosely really. I guess I mean more virtual kind of work than online, because I guess online it's a bit like just logging in and doing something, isn't it? But actually virtual is more interaction, isn't it really?
Definitely. I think it's going to be an exciting time, and I think that the pandemic and the lockdowns have given our industry broadly across all the sectors of our industry, I think it's given everybody food for thought and has given new opportunities, time to develop. You know, even with like, you know, this what we're involved with the Federation Now Professionals, you know, that wouldn't have had the space to grow and become something without the pandemic. And that's going to be the same, you know, online education, the virtual education is going to be something massive, I think, that comes out of this, and it could be so positive for the industry.
Definitely. I think it's just pushed everything forward a little bit more. There's some things that stopped and had to stay, and then some things that just been pushed forward a bit more, and I think that's really done it. That's pushed it forward, and we've just escalated things over the years as well, which is fab.
It is, and I think, you know, that like you talk about the soft skills, you know, people's awareness. You know, normally as a business owner, whether you work from your home salon or whether you're mobile or whether you've got a salon with 20 staff in or whatever it is, you know, and obviously if you're in a salon with 20 staff, hopefully you've got some really good business skills there. But, you know, that opportunity everyone's had to kind of realise that they do need to understand about how they market their services, how they cost their services and all that kind of stuff has been just invaluable. And I know so many people have taken many more business skill training opportunities in this last year, which is only a good thing, because people then will start valuing themselves and valuing our industry more, which is
I completely agree. I think it's done wonders for people, particularly, you know, if they've been struggling and things like that. It's helped them to streamline things a little bit more, or it's helped them to scale and things like that. And like I say, it's going to give us better long lasting kind of businesses overall, and it just means that like people that have been good at some of this stuff have been sharing the knowledge, which is fantastic as well. So I think it's been quite a nice way to kind of come together as a little bit of a community and things as well, sharing lots of knowledge. You know, some things paid for, and that's absolutely fine. People need to be paid for their time. Some people have whole new businesses born out of it, which is fantastic.
It's been amazing.
And I think, you know, yes, okay, we're putting a little box the rubbish bits because there has been some really, we'll just put that to one side, because that has been, you know, we've had some rubbish little bits, haven't we, and some bits that, you know, we've really hit us hard with, but we have had some positives out of it, and it has given us time to really look at what we're doing, why we're doing it, and refocus a little bit. And I think our businesses, once we get over this few little hurdles that we've got, and we settle into our reopening plans, and we settle into the new normal and the new future, however that may look, I think actually we'll see better, stronger businesses at the end of it, that have started to tick more than just the transactional service kind of box.
Yeah, is better and stronger professionals. That's what we want. Definitely. So
I agree.
Finally,
yay,
we'll have some quick fire questions.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah, no,
I'm ready.
Get ready. There's 7. These are in development, and so this may change in future interviews, but to begin with, we've got 7 questions. So just
quick fire round. I'm ready. I feel like I should have a buzzer. Okay. There's no buzzer.
Okay. We'll just go. So what is your why, and what makes you get out of bed in the morning?
My why is to completely transform how education is looked at, actually, and to make sure that we have amazing educators that know how to use the national standards, and to change the industry and to change the way that short courses are looked at as well. I want to elevate the short courses. So that's my why. My getting out of bed in the morning is receiving amazing messages from my students when they tell me they've had successful launches, they've got their first 10 bookings on their courses and things like that. So that gets me out of bed and gets me excited and passionate about things.
Wonderful. What has been the happiest moment in your career?
Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there's probably a few actually.
Yes.
I think actually probably in the last couple of weeks, thus far with the Academy Creator, because I've had a couple of students roll out some big numbers with their first courses as well. So I had one that literally got messaging me over the weekend, 10 sign-ups to her first course.
Oh, excellent.
After a very short intro kind of week or two as well, with just lead gen and stuff like that as well. And I've got another one who's fully booked for the next 5 or 6 weeks, which is fantastic. So I'm so excited. So that's probably my biggest kind of wins, I guess, at the moment as well. For that kind of thing. I mean, obviously joining the feds as well, which is really cool. But I see that as an industry kind of thing, that, you know, my duty and things like that. Whereas, you know, this is very personal to me because they're like my babies.
Absolutely. Okay, so what's the best piece of advice you've had, and did you listen at the time or learn the lesson later?
Oh, best piece of advice that I've had. Goodness me. Actually, do you know what, actually, is sometimes I think I have to hear things 3 or 4 times over. I think I'm one of them as well. But actually, some of it is probably going back to my first coach, actually, which would be Pete Scott. And actually just literally changing the way I look at everything was looking at the outcome. When I really got focused on looking at the end goal and the outcome, that massively changed it for me. And detracting myself from the end goal, I guess, if you like. Sometimes, like when I'm doing a launch or something like that, I'm busy doing the launch and serving and enjoying myself. I'm not thinking, how many sales can I get? You know, like I literally detach myself from that, and that makes a massive difference. Like just detach yourself from the money side of things and enjoy in the moment serving whoever it is you've got in front of you. Is just a massive game changer.
Absolutely. I've got to get that my head around that one too. In fact, I'm hoping I've got to speak to Pete and see if he's going to come on as a guest at some point, which would be good.
He'll be good.
Okay. What has been your biggest learning curve?
Biggest learning curve, I guess. I don't know. I think probably the biggest thing that I've learned actually, particularly over the last year as well, is that, you know, not everything has to be perfect when it goes out. Like, you don't have to, like, you know, perfectionism is an issue. It doesn't have to be perfect for the message to land. If you get too caught up in the message, sometimes the message doesn't land. And don't rush it. You know, saying like you don't want to make it perfect, but you don't want to rush something through as well. I think that's the other thing. When I rush something through and I'm not really thinking, and I don't think about all my logical steps from my coaches that they've given me, then sometimes it doesn't go the way I want it to. But equally, I don't think of anything as a failure. I see it as a lesson. That's definitely one of the things I've learned, is a lesson, and I just go back and I put it apart and I see what needs to be tweaked, because normally it's just a little bit of tweaking somewhere, messages off somewhere or something like that. So I don't get too upset. I don't think, oh, it's a failure, it's a flop, and go into a big depression about it. I'm just like, no, you know, that'd be a lot of ice cream otherwise. But it's very much like, you know, what's the lessons I can learn from that? Why didn't that quite go to plan? What can I do and tweak next time and things? And that's okay. I'm okay with it then.
Bit of self-assessment going on there. Okay, so what person, place or experience has altered your life the most?
These are really hard questions.
They're hard,
they're
not they?
Well, they are hard questions. Oh, I don't know, because I'm on mentor number 2 now, but I think I know I'm so terrible, aren't I? I just can't help myself. But I think probably the person that's probably given me the biggest kind of influence to get me thus far has been Pete. So Pete Scott has really helped. But then I've had Phil Harrison in between that time, who has really helped me with my lead generation, and that's been a huge game changer. And now with Charles Osmond, and I'm really enjoying that. But that's literally just the last couple of weeks. So, you know, who knows where I'm going to be in 6 months' time. But I'm ready for the next step and the next level up. And it's finding the right people to help guide you with those messages and things as well. So I take a lot of inspiration from people, and just people in the industry doing well for themselves. I love my students. I take inspiration from, because you know, I love it when they flip something on its head and do something different. I'm like, that's brilliant.
Yeah, this is it. Who knew you could do that way? You know, it's like, okay, what is your ultimate go-to treatment when you are doing your self-care, and where would you go to have that treatment?
Oh, Pampering stuff would be facials. I do like a facial. And particularly I'm really into like the laser kind of facials and stuff like that, the skin rejuvenation facials and things that my friend does. But I am really big on like remedial massage. I like having remedial massage done as well. So I see that as my self-care. If I go to a spa, like those are the two kind of things I'll try and book as well. They're my biggest things.
Excellent. And is there anywhere that you go particularly? Do you prefer going to like a day spa, or do you go to a local salon if you want to have something done?
I've got a couple of local salons, and I've got some friends in there, and I've got some that I can go in and be a bit anonymous, because otherwise if I go and see my friend I end up chatting too much, and it's not really relaxing.
No.
Weirdly enough, I chat too much. So I do have some other local salons and stuff. I've got a friend that does remedial massage. I go and see her, but if I'm feeling pampery, because I live sort of not far from Bagshot in North Hampshire, so Penny Hill Park is one of my favourite kind of spas to go to, because it's only 30 minutes away from me, but it feels like it's miles away. And it's got a lovely spa and hotel there as well. So yeah, when non-COVID times, me and my husband visit there at least once a year, if not twice, if we can manage it, with a weekend away without the boy, and enjoying ourselves in the spa and chilling and eating all the nice food in the posh restaurant and getting dressed up and stuff. So yeah, that's my happy place.
A lifetime ago. I've just got back to doing swims at my local gym that is kind of got like a bit day spa-y there, and it is just so nice being back in the water and being back in that environment. But and lastly, would you do it all again?
Totally. I would completely. I've even this year, which sounds like a weird thing to say, I sit there and think about where I am now with my business, and I think, if this hadn't happened this last year, where would I be? Because I think it's evolved naturally, and where it has got to because of what we've been through, even though this wasn't the original plan. So it's one of those weird, it's a weird kind of place I'm sat in there, because I had the Academy Creator, I just envisaged it being very, very different, and I had to evolve with it because of the different things that we had kind of going on. And actually I'm really pleased, because actually I think it's a much better product and a much better course, and I've got a few other courses and things that go around it, so I actually think it's a better thing. So actually, I think everything I've done, even if it's been a mistake, I think has actually been a good thing. Actually, I wouldn't go back and change it. I try not to have regrets if I can help it, but I would try not to go back and change anything, because I think I had to go through that. I think I needed to walk that path to be where I am now. So even all the mistakes I made when I first set up my training academy, struggling and things like that, and living month to month and all that kind of stuff, I think actually, do you know what? I think I probably needed to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So I think I had to do the hard road. So actually nothing, weirdly enough.
Great. Well, that's all very nice and positive. So that's been a great amount of time we've just spent chatting. I think for us that's quite a miracle that we've done well that amount of time.
Because we could be here for like 3 or 4 hours, and I think we could switch off after a while.
We do. Anyway,
we could do like a big long just chatting session of just like Donna and Sue have a chat, and everybody could just drop in and out.
Show,
just in a live, and they could just drop in and out and just ramble on.
Maybe we have to do another episode. We have to do another episode where it's just us sitting chewing the cud over the industry, because I
think it's a good idea.
It is an amazing industry to work in, and
love it.
And even though like my world's all kind of shifting a little bit at the moment, which will become more apparent as
but that's what I like about this industry. It's so diverse. There's something new all the time. There's plenty of room and there's plenty of room for everybody. I think that's the thing. If there's enough slice of the pie for everybody, I just don't think we need to be competitors with each other. We really don't. I don't see competitors. They're just other people that are doing something
we just
different.
Need to value ourselves, I think, is the biggest key to the year we've just been through and going forward.
But
so thank you so much, Donna. And next week we start our career pathways episodes, starting with employed status as a role in the industry. And that'd be really great. And thank you so much for coming on today, Donna.
Thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely.
See you.
Bye.